make every get-together chill. This Memorial Day, get up to an extra $1,000 off select top brand appliances like LG. Plus, get free delivery at the Home Depot. Tackle pool towels and camp laundry with a large capacity washer. And host in style with the fridge serving craft ice, mini craft ice, cubed ice, and crushed ice. Shop appliance savings now through June 3rd at the Home Depot. Offer valid May 14th through June 3rd, U.S. only. Free delivery on appliance purchases of $998 or more. See store online for details.
You said this place was steps from the water.
We just haven't found the steps yet.
How much did we save?
Enough.
Enough to get lost?
Or you could book a stay with Hilton.
Welcome to your oceanfront room, just steps from the water.
The Hilton sale is on now. Book on Hilton.com or the Hilton app and save up to 20% to get the stay you expected. When you want savings, not surprises, it matters where you stay. Hilton, for the stay.
Buckeye Talk is about to begin. Hey, 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 come on in.
Welcome back to Buckeye Talk. I am Stephen Means, and that is Andrew Gillis. This is a Tuesday recruiting pod. I hope you guys enjoyed our nonsensical, weird, turning MAC schools into feeder schools for Big Ten schools podcast. That's just, I don't know, just thinking of outside the box conversations that we can have there. If you thought it was great, let me know. 614-350-3315, 2-week free trial, $3.99 after that. If you thought it was stupid, let me know. 614-350-3315, 2-week free trial, $3.99 after that. Either way, I'm either going to know, yo, you should do more weird, nonsensical things like that, or I'm going to know you are an idiot, Steven. You should never do anything like that ever, 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 ever again. And most of the time, you guys are probably somewhere in the middle. But let me know. Today, recruiting, I think the last time we did this was maybe January. And so now it's time for an update on that as we head into official visit season. Gillis is actually on vacation this week, so this is the last pod you're going to hear him on. But when he gets back, official visit season will officially be in swing and will be maybe, I think, like a week or so away from the June camps starting. So we always want to do this ahead of things when it's just, where it feels more like a market down situation than, visits are happening and now you're just reacting to crystal ball. So it's predicting Ohio State's 2027 class. Mock prediction 2.0. Right now, Ohio State has 11 commits in its class, and 1-3 has it as the number 8 class in the country. I think 247 has like the number 10 class in the country. Regardless, it's highlighted by 2 5-star recruits by every recruiting metric you want to use, and that's David Jacobs, the defensive end from Georgia, and then 5-star wide receiver from Ohio, Jameer Brown, who has shut down his recruitment.
And here first.
Yeah, Gillis actually, I was listening to the video. Gillis was one who has actually asked him those questions. So shout out to Gillis for asking the things that the people want to hear. We'll talk more about Jameer Brown in a second. We're going to start on the defensive side because I'm putting words in Gillis's mouth, but maybe these are the right words to put. Defense is less interesting and complicated than the offensive side of the ball. So I guess to ease people into it, we'll start on the defensive side of the ball, and Gillis, take it away. We can start with whatever position group you want to start with. You can go highest rated to lowest rated, however you want to do this. The floor is yours.
Let's go by position. I think that might be, I suppose, the easiest way to do this. But yeah, let's start with secondary. It feels like I told Steven this before we started recording. We just did an hour and 15 minutes or whatever that was on quarterbacks. And also, we always go quarterback, running back, receiver. Let's give the secondary some love. So we're going to start on defense. I have Ohio State with 3. Angelo Smith is obviously in the class. He is the younger brother of Jeremiah. I have him sticking. While I think it would be a neat story to see 2 brothers play together, I don't think it's going to happen. I think JJ might be playing for an NFL team next fall. Eli Johnson, he is a safety that I really, really like. I'm going to go see him. If I mapped out my schedule correctly, he goes to Cibolo Steel down in Texas. Mm-hmm. It's San Antonio area, I believe, and they play Lake Travis, a traditional power, the night before Ohio State plays Texas. So if anybody is making the trip down to Texas and they want to go see an Ohio State football commit. That would be a really fun game to do it because those are two pretty strong programs. I really like Eli Johnson as a player. I think he's going to stick. And then I have them adding one more. Kenneth Sullivan. Sullivan, I think, is someone that can round out this class. He's from Stafford, Virginia, at St. James Academy, 6 foot, 195, number 237 overall player in the Rivals industry ranking. I believe we've talked about that before. Rivals is the industry ranking now is the mix of everything. The 247 composite, they only use their 247 rankings, so the Rivals industry ranking is now kind of the true, like, let's take a mix of everything and throw it in a pot and see what we get. So those are the three. I think this is a strong class for Matt Guerrieri. I think this is a good class for Matt Guerrieri. You've got a lot of players here. You're going to hear this word a lot when it comes to safety recruiting. Versatility. Ohio State did take 4 last cycle. Kamari Bing, Blaine Bradford, Simeon Caldwell, Caden Gebhardt. I don't think you need to take 4 again. I think 3 is completely fine. Earl Little's going to go. Terry Moore is going to go. Jalen McClain has the ability to go. But then even if you lose all 3 of those guys, Leroy Roker's still around. Blaine Bradford will be going into year 2. Deshaun Stewart, year 3. They're going to have some options there. So I think 3 is a good number for this class. You never want to say never with the portal, but this is one of those positions where if you do look at the transfer portal, and this is if McClain, Little, and Moore are all gone. Mm-hmm. Obviously, Jalen can come back for a 4th year. Even if all 3 of those guys are gone, I think you still feel pretty good if it's Blaine Bradford and Leroy Roker. Maybe you add somebody else out of the portal, but it's going to have to be somebody pretty substantial. I don't think this is a glaring need after the 2026 season.
So is there star power in this safety group? And I don't want to say this as if I'm being dismissive, but are there like stars, or are these just like really good quality players that, okay, one day they're going to be a starter from Ohio State? Like, is there a member of the tree you just mentioned, 2 of which are already in the class, where you're like, that dude's going to be a star for Ohio State?
Star is hard. I don't know about star. I guess the question would be, Steven, do you think Jalen McClain is a star? Not literally the position star, but the.
Yeah, I was going to say. Yes,
because star technically is a safety position. Like, is he a superstar, or not superstar, but is he a standout star type of?
I think there's a chance that star maybe isn't the word, because the problem is Caleb Downs existed in that room, and it's like, let's start. It's like, okay, we can't put. I think if we ranked the 10 best players on Ohio State's football team right now, I think we would all have Jalen McClain pretty safely on that list.
He's in that mix, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's maybe about. Is there a guy in this class to where 2 years from now we're like, okay, he's one of the 10 best players on Ohio State's football team?
I think Eli Johnson can be that. I don't think it's going to be year 1. I love him as a hitter. Is 6'3", 205 pounds, 210 pounds, whatever he's listed at. That kid is just. He is everything that I like in a safety, because I think he can run well with that size. People say like, oh, do you, it's like when you talk about like high school scouting or college scouting or pro scouting, oh, he has a type. Well, I have a type, and I love long, rangy, physical defensive backs. Screw your 5'8" slot receiver or slot corner who's just going to do one thing. Like, great, cool. We can have a role for that guy. Like Lorenzo was obviously in that role. Hancock was a little bit undersized, played that role. You can find somebody there. I love like a 6'3" safety, man. Like, I love, those big type of bodies that can run downhill with some speed and some aggression. I think Eli's got that.
So that's safety. I guess let's just work our way up to the front then. Let's go corner. That's a position group where I think, coming off of what Tim Walton did the last 2 classes, I don't know if he necessarily needs to have stars in this class. In fact, it seems like he's still looking for his options in this class. Who do you think they end up with?
Yeah, I have 2. I have Deontay Malone. He is a kid out of Massillon High School, Washington High School, I should say, up there. The famous Tigers program, 75. I think this is a kid. His recruitment kind of blossomed a little bit later than some of these other kids on this list. I think, you get to the top of the line and you see a John Meredith, the 5-star corner out of Texas and North Crowley, which is where Legend Bay went to high school. And you think, oh, wow, like, oh my goodness, blah, blah, blah. Like this guy's that. He was not that his whole career, but long, rangy, athletic. Athletic, I think, is the imperative word there. I really like Malone. Steven, tell me if this guy sounds familiar. A 6'2", 175-pound corner from a football-rich state. Does that sound like Tim Walton? I think it should. Bryce Woods, I have is in that class as well. I have two. This to me feels very, let's see where we're at in the fall.
Yeah.
There could be some fall evaluations here, but Jermaine Matthews is going to go. But like, man, you could really point to a room next year where it's Devin Sanchez, Dominic Kelly, and those are your two outside corners. And is Jay Timmons kind of that star role where he's like slot corner / safety that plays up top that, you know, kind of does both things that star position entails? I think you could find that. And then, wow, look at that. Oh my goodness, we've got Miles Lockhart still in the roster. Is Cam Calhoun still here? Jordan Thomas is still in the roster. So I don't think you need, you know, maybe star power. I think this is a good depth building class because I think you really like what you got in your freshmen. I think 2 is good. We'll see where we're at. And I think the way that Ohio State fans have to look at this is, you know, we're combining the draft into free agent and free agency into one. So I don't think you really need to hit the portal for this position, barring a 1, mass exodus, or 2, you know, Devin Sanchez doesn't play well, or Jay Timmons doesn't progress, or you're not sure about Dominic Kelly and there's a dude out there that you can go get. I think 2 is good, and frankly, you know, with 10 in the room, or I think it's 8 in the room right now. It depends on, you know, if, you know, Jay Timmons, Tim Walton said he's with him. If he's there, I believe that's 8. Then, you know, you lose Jermaine. You're not losing maybe a ton of talent in that room, or you're not losing a lot of numbers in that room unless there is, like I said, a mass exodus in the portal. So 2, Malone and Woods.
I would say who are the 5? They're definitely outside corner. They're strictly outside corner guys who will be back in 2027, assuming nobody leaves for the portal, would be Devin Sanchez, Dominic Kelly, Cam Calhoun, Jordan Woods, and Jordan Thomas. And then like Jay Timmons as a guy who can move inside, who can play outside. I think this is an interesting class. You're saying it's a depth class. Does this, I think, as we talk about 2028 at some point, not today, but do you feel like that class is where it's like, yo, you need to go get like a dude?
I think 28 is where you're going to need some kind of star power, you know, because you could have that star power in Jay Timmons. And I don't want people to forget Jordan Thomas on this roster. Sure. I was a kid in his recruiting class. He did everything right. I never heard a bad word about him in terms of academically, in terms of personally, in terms of character, in terms of football. Like, I never heard anything like, hey, he's got to work on this. Like, I think Jay Thomas, or Jordan Thomas, excuse me, and Jay Timmons are a great 1-2 kind of corner punch, whether inside, outside, whatever. We'll figure that out. So you've got some help there. But 28, I think, is where you're really going to need that, because the way that you have talked about Devin Sanchez, and I mean you as in the Ohio State Royal you.
I mean, me too.
Well, like, you Stephen Means, but you Stephen Means, Jalen Ramsey. Who was the other? What was it? Jalen Ramsey.
He cut his hair, so he's Pat Surtain.
Pat Surtain, right? It's Jalen Ramsey and Pat Surtain. So you got a mix of Jalen Ramsey and Pat Surtain. He's only going to play 2 more years of college football. You kind of got to be ready for that. So, you know, I think you're going to need to supplement with some star power down.
This would end the streak. Tim Walton's had a 5-star recruit in 3 straight cycles. Aaron Scott in 2024, who ends up transferring to Oregon after 2 years. Devin Sanchez in 2025, who was heading into year 2, and he is expected to be a starter. And then Jay Timmons, who's heading into his freshman year, was a 5-star recruit. So 3 straight years with a 5-star, and you're saying that won't continue. But that's just like, it's more because of a roster construction. Like, do you need to go chase a 5-star cornerback when you've already kind of built up a room and you want to make sure that you have balance of starter guys developing in the background and 2s and things like that. Okay. Linebacker James Laurinaitis is having the year of a lifetime. He just sent 2 NFL linebackers who were top 7 picks in the NFL draft. He's getting enshrined in the Hall of Fame later this year. How's he going? Yeah, and he also had a 5-star linebacker come in from Cleveland, Ohio recently. So I don't know. I guess James Laurinaitis, how's he following this up in this 2027 class?
Yeah, I think he follows it up pretty well. There's a kid out of Blue Springs South High School in Kansas City, Missouri by the name of Prince Goldsby. I think he joins the class. He's the number 114 overall player in the Rivals industry ranking. Checked in with somebody today. They feel good about that. Quentin Cypher in the class as well. He's 202 overall prospect in the rankings. So you're landing, 2 top 250 kids and 1 kid who's kind of flirting on, top 100 rankings. Goldsby 6'4", 200 pounds. Cypher 6'2", 215. I love those 2 as a tandem. I think that's a really, really good pairing for James Laurinaitis, who frankly is whipping ass on the recruiting trail. TJ Alford, Riley Pettijohn, They were, they were highly rated recruits. Not only that, he pulled Alford out of Florida, Pettijohn out of Texas. Look, Sincere Johnson's a great football player, and I've loved him for 2 years as a recruit. Like, I love watching him play. He's angry, he's aggressive, he's smart. I can't wait to watch him kind of develop. But then you add, CJ Santa and Braxton Rembert in that class late. He's done a pretty bang-up job, and I think those two, paired with Kaylon Bailey, is somebody that I think is going to really kind of go up the rankings here. So I have Ohio State taking 3 linebackers in the class. If you look at the rankings, Kaylon Bailey is a 3-star player in the 1200s, like number 1,274 overall player. And he's listed as an edge. This is your let's see what we got body type that maybe is a stand-up, maybe is maybe is that kind of player, like athletically freakish. I was talking to somebody in Ohio State's program a couple of weeks ago, and they brought up this kid specifically, and they said they're playing him here, and he's going to play this in college because he's athletic as – there were a couple swear words missed in there, but he's athletic as you know what. And I think Ohio State really likes him. The Glenville pipeline is strong. Obviously you just did that with Sincere and Jameer Perez. I think if Ohio State pushes for this kid, I think they'll get him. And I think you have Cypher and Goldsby kind of as your linebackers that are off ball. And I think Bailey gives you like a really, really fun, like this is a springy, explosive dude off the edge.
It's interesting seeing James recruit this position because it's like, can you find another Arvell? Can you find another Sonny Styles? It's like, can you find 2 aliens again? No, you can't find 2 aliens here. So it's does it feel like he's recruiting 2 types of individuals here? Like, and I'm not going to use Arvell and Sonny as the examples. I'm actually going to use 2 other people as the examples. There's like the Braxton Rembert, who maybe a lower rated guy who's coming into his own. Maybe he's still physically maturing and whatnot in terms of what he's going to be. But Braxton might end up being an edge one day. He might end up being a will linebacker one day. Right. And then you got a guy like Peyton Pierce, where it's like, that's like the epitome of a Mike linebacker. Like that's the 2 styles of players that like James Laurinaitis is consistently looking for in a year in, year out. The guy who can maybe be a bit of a hybrid, and then the guys who are like traditional Mike and Will linebackers who are doing traditional football stuff.
Yeah, they have, I think, good delineations of that, right? Like, like you said with Pierce. The thing that I'm fascinated by to kind of take this separately, I guess, like the idea of recruiting Braxton Rembert in the recruiting class last year, and then I think Bailey, if they get him, like, again, there are certain kids in this class where it's like, I feel like if they push for him, they'll get him. And adding Bailey in that mix, it gives you a different flavor. And I think versatility is the name of the game in the secondary. But I think you're also hearing that at more positions now than maybe just secondary. For years, it was, 4 down front, and, you're not really experimenting. And what did Nick Saban call it? Antiquated. Remember that word that we heard for 3 weeks straight when Ohio State was kind of in the midst of the 2024 season? I think you're starting to hear those words, versatility and things like that, from kids that I talk to. You're starting to hear that, expanded out a little bit. Just to add one more thing. We talked for so long about like how cool it was and how impressive it was that Brian Hartline didn't need to use the transfer portal as a receivers coach. I don't think James Laurinaitis is going to have to use the transfer portal either as a linebackers coach, because Peyton Pierce is a 3rd-year player. We'll see. He's, as crazy as it is, considering how fast these kids move in and out, he's going to have an NFL decision to make. We'll see what happens there. But you also have TJ Alford, 2nd year. Riley Pettijohn, 2nd year. Garrett Stover, 3rd year. Then all of a sudden Eli Lee's going to be in his 3rd year in 27. Sincere Johnson's going to be banging on the door in his 2nd year. CJ Santa, Braxton Rembert, maybe a little bit longer, but you can find a mix there. You could absolutely be in a situation where your 2027 linebacking core is 1, 2, 3. Let's say Peyton Pierce kicks ass and is gone. Like, let's just make this way easier. Garrett Stover, Riley Pettijohn, TJ Alford. Garrett Stover takes over for Peyton Pierce. Riley Pettijohn plays next to him. And then TJ Alford is your 3rd linebacker and your kind of hybrid type player. And then, oh, by the way, you have Sincere Johnson coming off the bench. That's crazy. And that, I think, is a testament to I keep saying Brian Hartline, but to James Laurinaitis. So Ohio State has done really, really well. I think linebacker is one of those positions where in high school recruiting, if you're a fan, you don't really got to worry what's going on. you don't really got to worry what's going on the field. And frankly, at the end of the year, I don't think you're going to be looking at it going, man, those guys really stink, and our recruiting class was not up to snuff. We got to go hit the portal.
So Christian Allegro is more of the outlier than the standard.
Yeah, and I think it was more of just like they had a unique set of circumstances where, like, I don't know, I actually don't know if we know this, but like if in the building on August 10th, if they went, Arvell's gone, like we're for sure he's gone at the end of this year. Like I wonder how much that maybe changed plans, because we talked about like, hey, Arvell Reese is going to be awesome. And then Arvell Reese ended up being the 5th pick in the draft. So I don't know how that changed their.
I think August was too early because you never know how a kid's going to respond to now the world knows about you, right? I think the thing about the Texas game is he was kind of the worst, best kept secret at Ohio State, is that this guy might be the most sexy in terms of draft prospect there is in college football. And okay, when the Texas game happened, it's like, okay, well, there's 11 teams who now know who Arvell Reese is. Is he going to continue up that pace? And so Arvell is a good, interesting study because you probably had the inkling of, okay, if this hits in a major way, we might have to shift gears here, but it's not like JJ where it's in the plans of like, okay, this is it, so let's plan for it that way. I think the interesting thing about Christian Allegro and the fact that you're saying that you feel like he might be more of an outlier than a standard. And listen, anything can happen, right? All this sounds good, and then we're in January again, and like half the rosters in the portal all over again. Right. But based on where things are now, Christian Allegro was a unique circumstance of you lost 2 guys who played 600 plus snaps last year, and nobody else has played more than 600 in their career here. And so you probably, even if you believed in the talent in the room, you probably needed a buffer just in case. Hey, Riley Pettijohn just missed all the spring. What if he's still a year away? What if TJ Alford's still a year away? What if Garrett Stover's still a year away? Sincere Johnson's a freshman. So like from a roster construction standpoint, I understand why you saw, hey, there's 1,000 career snaps, and he also might physically be able to do some of the stuff that Arvell Reese was able to give you last year as a guy who can do a little bit of both of those things. I get that. Based on where the room is, though, I think I am in lockstep with you of that's not going to be a problem in January because we're going to be looking at TJ Alford, Riley Pettijohn, Peyton Pierce, and Garrett Stover, and they will have all played a healthy amount of meaningful snaps. So your room is just going to be older by default than it is right now, where it's in this January, the room was young, talented, but very inexperienced. Next year, the room is going to be young, talent, but a lot of experience that we can build on. So you might, unless there's like, I don't know, the best linebacker in the country hops in the portal and says, I only want to go to Columbus, Ohio, then maybe you're in that position. I agree with you. Okay, let's start inside with defensive tackle. Interesting year for
interesting class.
Larry Johnson. It's another round of nobody knows what's going on, and Larry Johnson likes it that way, and he plans to keep it that way. So this is like throwing darts in the dark.
I'm glad you said that because I was going to say pretty much the exact same thing. With all the other positions, I don't even want to say they're worse at telegraphing it. It's just like, I remember it was I was here for 2 months, a month, September maybe of 23, and Eric Mensah committed. And it was one of those things where like everybody on the beat went, didn't really hear much about this guy. And I went, oh my God. And I'm sitting there thinking like, I can't believe I didn't know about this guy. And Steven was like, that's the way Larry operates, dude. That's the way this happens.
Listen, I've learned if coaches want the general public to know about something, the general public's gonna know about it. If coaches don't want the general public to know about something, I would say 90% of the time, unless it's like a bad thing, the general public's not gonna know about it. So this is, take your shot though. Who do you think it's gonna be? Do you think they're gonna get Jalen Brewster?
No, I do not think they're going to get
Jalen
Jalen
Brewster.
Brewster.
He's going to flip to Indiana? Seriously, before we get into...
I don't know, because the Brewster thing, like, Texas Tech has the money, man. And, like, that...
Indiana has Cuban.
Indiana, yeah. And the Indiana NIL thing has really kind of cranked up. But, like, other program, Texas has really kind of cranked up here. Like, it would be... like if he does go there. Miami, I think, is somebody you always have to pay attention for. I feel like I read that. He's not going to Ohio State. I feel very, very confident.
Yeah,
he's not coming to Columbus. But I could see Indiana. I could see him sticking kind of local to SMU. I could see him going to Miami. He's a damn good football player. And Indiana landing the number 1 player in the class after, I think, a crystal ball prediction machine, whatever you call him, went in for Monch and Sales, the 5-star receiver from Indiana. That is a unique situation that we have going on in Bloomington, Indiana.
So I guess then let's talk about it this way before you reveal some names here. I want you to say yes or no right now. Is this guy on the roster in 2027? Just based off, not because he's in the portal, but he's just, based off eligibility and whether or not he can go to the NFL or not. Jameer Perez.
Yes.
Okay. Darius McKinley.
Yes.
Emmanuel Ruffin.
I'll say no because
Okay.
I don't want to just predict all freshmen. I'll say no.
Okay. But he can be at least.
He can't yet.
Damari Simeon.
I'll say yes. I think 2 of the 3 staying is reasonable.
Okay. So if they keep 3 of the 4 freshmen bare minimum, like you had, the reason I'm asking this question is you just had 4 defensive tackles in a recruiting class. We'll see what happens with Jason Moore, but he can come back next year. Will Smith can come back next year. Edric Houston can come back next year. Think John Walker has another year of eligibility? I don't think James Smith does. But it's not going to happen because that's not the way the sport is. But is defensive tackle even that big of a need in terms of how many people you need when you're coming off of a class where you just added 4 guys? And your room doesn't have a ton of guys who are either graduating seniors and or are like NFL eligible and they're like 1,000% going to the NFL. Edric Houston's the only one where it's like he might have a decision to make in January, and depending on how the season goes, it can go either way.
Yeah, Ohio State, I think, will be active in the transfer portal market at defensive tackle.
Okay.
Pretty much no matter what happens, because you mentioned James Smith will be gone. Edric Houston, we don't know. Jason Moore, 4th-year player. Will Smith Jr., 4th-year player. John Walker, 4th-year player. So you got 3 4th years and a 3rd year with those 3 and then Edric. I don't know if it's a reasonable ask that all 4 of those guys return for 27. Maybe they do, and I have egg on my face. But it just kind of feels like you might be in a situation where those guys are gone. And then, if that's true, we talked about Jameer during his recruitment as this dude might be really good one day, but it might take 2 years, and then if you do lose like Ruffin or Simeon or McKinley, whoever, are those guys ready to play? Maybe not starter reps, but are they ready to be your 3-4 defensive tackle? I don't know. And I think Ohio State's probably going to, probably find themselves in that realm. So I think Ohio State needs some bodies in this class. But I think you also kind of need to operate with the understanding all right, Jalen Brewster's not coming here. Oh, you're going to add some players on the defensive line that maybe are not the 5-star qualities, but they are dudes that you can develop, and then you're going to have to hit the portal to supplement. Because when you lose so many guys like that, it's like a think of it like a hose where water's flowing through the hose, and somebody at the base of the hose folds it up, and they put the kink in the hose. Okay, you let it go. Water's still going when that dude does that because water's still flowing out, but there's that gap now. And you're going to have to supplement that gap because if you look at it, I'm sure if you did a scholarship chart, you have the 4 guys that are in their, or you have James Smith, who's a 5th year or 4th year, Edric, or James Smith, Jason Moore, those guys are the 4th year, Edric's your 3rd year, and then you got nothing. So you're going to have to fill that out, and I think that's going to be the portal no matter what.
Okay, so who's in the class?
Yeah. I have Ronaldo Perez. He's a local kid. I went and saw him, attends Columbus Academy. Really, really interesting football player, 6'5", 240. He is much more of your 3-tech defensive lineman that can, 3-tech. We'll see. We talked about Jameer Perez maybe changing the math in this class and seeing where, the defensive line can go and how that indicates a 3-down front. I have them getting Nate Kamba. He attends Corvin Community School in Charlotte, North Carolina, number 242 overall prospect. And then, I had wanted to swing big. I think that I wanted to take a big swing here. And if I'm wrong, darn, I tried. Carlos May, kid from Alabama. Ohio State has done decently well in the last couple of classes. 6'2", 330. Not 6'2", 330. Let me make sure I separate those two. That kid can give you a different body type on your interior defensive line. And I think he opens up a lot of different things for you. So, you keep a handful of those guys from your freshman class. You bring in these guys in 27. You've got a good, strong base of 1st and 2nd years with your portal. The portal need going into 2028 is maybe not as significant now. So I have them taking 3. I think they're probably going to have to take 3 because you're going to start to need to build this back up considering you just had a lot of attrition after the 2025 season.
And then we get the edge where right now, the future is DJ Jacobs, and then you're pairing that with Kari Wilder. That sounds fun.
Yeah. I think DJ's sticking in the class. I think he'll stick around. I've heard good things about Wyatt Smith, St. Thomas Aquinas, top 100 kid, number 79 overall. I think 2 top 100 edge rushers is a really, really strong group for this defensive line. Because again, I think this is kind of maybe a little bit ahead of where your defensive tackles are, where you're going to lose Kenyatta, you're going to lose Bo, you're going to lose Quay Rusaw, Zion Grady, Kari Wilder, Epi Satanale, Dre Quinn. That's a good first and second, but you need to start kind of building up that depth behind them. So I think that's a really good 1-2 punch. And then I think I'm trying to look through. We haven't talked about a flip yet. I do have a flip.
Okay.
Munir Lewis, attends Brush in the Cleveland area, committed to Louisville. 6'4", 240. Some sites have him 6'5". I really liked him at the camp that I just was at a couple of week or two ago. As you guys are listening to this. Beat Jimmy Kalis off the edge in a one-on-one rush. Thought he looked smooth. Thought he looked agile. This, to me, is one of those recruitments where if Ohio State keeps tabs, and it seems like they are, and it seems like they are remaining interested, just from kind of talking to people at that camp, as if it's one of those things where you could get to the end of the line and Ohio State says, we've seen enough from your senior film to where we like where this is headed. And we feel confident adding you into the class. We would love for you to join us. And I think faced with that offer, I think Lewis gives you that third option at edge. So I think I have them taking 6 defensive linemen, 3 on the edge and 3 on the interior.
That's what you call a reset on the defensive line, which you probably have.
Yeah, I think they need one.
Louisville, man. They keep losing their trench players to Ohio State. Didn't that happen with Jake Cook?
Jake Cook. He was there for Louisville, and he always wanted to be a Buckeye, and Justin Fry offered him, and it was one of those situations. I think we could be in a situation with Lewis too, where it's like, man, Louisville, you did everything right, and this is nothing against the Cardinals, nothing against the Fighting Lincoln Keenholtzes, but you did what you had to do. But sometimes a bigger program shows up and they can flex their muscles.
I think that's a good trade. Lincoln Keenholtz for 2 recruits. Yeah, I think that's a solid quarterback trade.
It's a solid trade in general because as a he's going to be the starting quarterback this year.
Right, like you get a starting quarterback, but it's like you didn't give up too much capital. You gave up 2 prospects across 2 different classes for a starting quarterback who would have been Ohio State's backup quarterback. I think if you put that in the trade machine on Madden, I think it'll equal out. I think that's a solid trade. Now, if Lincoln Keenholtz turns into the best quarterback in the ACC, I guess Ohio State can have some gripes about what they got in this trade. But
Lincoln Keenholtz wins the ACC. Ohio State loses twice, and people are going to start having some words on the internet.
No, they're not. This is the ACC. I'm just open to the idea of what if Louisville wins the ACC and then a quarterfinal matchup is Ohio State against Louisville, because obviously Ohio State's. Quinn Ewers was the first time Ohio State played a former Ohio State quarterback in the playoff, and could that happen again with Lincoln Keenholtz, depending on what he does at Louisville? Okay, that's the defensive side. You have 6 defensive linemen, 3 linebackers, 2 corners, and 3 safeties.
Correct.
In the class.
If my math is correct, that is 14.
Okay, and that leaves another half of the class on the offensive side, where actually they've been kind of busy offensively, so a lot of the predictions going to be skill position players, and we'll get into that when we come back from the break on Buckeye Talk. And we're back here on Buckeye Talk. Stephen Means and Andrew Gillis predicting Ohio State's recruiting class for the second time. This is 2.0 mock class. Talking about an Ohio State class that is ranked in the top 10 right now. It's been a little quiet on the recruiting end for Ohio State. They've been kind of working maybe a little bit more behind the scenes, and official visits are right around the corner, so we'll be hopping into those. And then June camps as well, right around the corner. I like this. Let's ask this when it comes to the trenches. So here's right now, Ohio State's offensive line class. You've got Kellen Weimer, who's a 4-star recruit. Jimmy Callis, who's the most recent addition to the class. Davis Seaman, a recent addition to the class, meaning within the last couple of weeks here he joined. Mason Wilt and Brody McNeil. That's their class so far. So that is 5 offensive linemen already in the class. Most of them seem to have some positional flexibility between guard and tackle. And then you got a guy like Davis Seaman, who maybe is just more of a guard in that situation. Are they done on the offensive line, or is there room to go chase something here?
They're not done, but I think they're done, if that makes sense. So I have them sticking with 5 in the class. I think 5 is where it's at. I think 5 is the end goal, or not the end goal, but I think the end number, which, by the way, Weimer, Kalis, Wilt, McNeil, Seaman. I'm good with that. That's fine. Those 5 are fine. They are after Caden Moss. I was talking to some people in the program. They really like him. He's an interior player out of Mississippi. They're going to have to battle Ole Miss for him. Jimmy Kalis said it on record when we were talking to him after that recruiting camp. Hey, I'm trying to get this guy in the class. We're focusing our efforts on him. And for those that have followed recruiting, you all know that, a lot of times the edict comes from down on high, where they say, hey, why don't you go talk to this kid, see what you and then they see what you think. How do you get along with him? What do you think? Good guy, good dude, whatever. And then you bring him into the class, and so that there definitely is some interest there. Heard that from a couple of different places. We'll see where that ends, but I think 5 is where they end up.
Okay.
I think 5 is a solid number. Don't think look, you could get to the end of the year and they've got a ton of offensive linemen that are going to be making decisions. It's almost even not worth. We could do an hour and 15 minutes, as we are one to do on this podcast, about what the 2027 offensive line could look like and who could be back, Luke Montgomery could technically come back, I believe, especially if this 5-for-5 deal goes through. Luke Montgomery can come back. Philip Daniels can come back. Josh Padilla can come back. Austin Searville can come back. Armstrong can come back. Deontay Armstrong, Ian Moore, Gabe Van Sickle, and then all the freshmen that are Jake Cook, second year, Carter Lowe, second year, Landry Breed, Sam Greer, Maxwell Riley, Tucker Smith, Mason Wilhelm. All those guys could be in the room, and then you got to add those 5, and then look, modern college football, somebody's going to be leaving, and some buddies are going to be leaving.
Yeah.
So it's almost impossible to try to project out, but I think you do like adding just, hey, let's just keep churning. Let's just keep bringing them in. Let's just keep going where we're going. And I think unless you have some kind of mass exodus at the end of the year, there's really not a scenario where you look at and say, damn, they really got to hit the portal because they didn't do it.
And again, all this is done with a caveat of there was a mass exodus this past year, and this is just kind of becoming the norm of mass exodus. And so the question now becomes, are you losing players that you don't want to lose? Because now that we look back on all the players they lost, how many of those guys at Ohio State feel like we couldn't afford to lose that guy? Because if they didn't lose anybody they didn't want to lose, then you're fine. A tight end, we're recording this Friday, May 15th. We literally hopped on here 15 minutes after we just kind of validated the fact that Brock Williams was headed to Texas. But you've been telling our texters that and our listeners that for months. So this is, I don't know, we're not going to sit here and do what's the impact of Ohio State losing a guy that you've already told everybody they weren't going to get. So I guess we can look forward of what is happening with tight end recruiting in 2027 with Brock Williams now officially off the board. Where are they going next? Or where have they already been pivoting to for weeks, essentially?
Yeah, there's, Sean Curry is the guy that I have in this class. I think he is somebody that, is an option for
6'7", 230 pounds.
6'7". He's a massive tight end. He's a massive kid in the class. Steven's eyes rolled out of his head when I did that.
I want better for you.
Nate Roberts, I think by the time we get to 2027 should be if things go as we think they could, and if things go as Ohio State thinks they could with Nate Roberts, we should be talking about Nate Roberts as an All-American tight end candidate going into 2027. So I think you feel pretty good about that. Max LeBlanc still around. It seems like he had a really good offseason. Brody Lennon's still here. Nick Lauder's still here. But those are your 4. This could be another portal year. I think I would not be stunned if they go out and get another veteran portal, because you've got a lot of old guys and you've got a lot of young guys, but I don't know if you kind of have those intermediary. I think Curry gives you an option. Mason Oglesby is in the mix as well. They want, as I understand it, they want 2 in the class, but I left 1 at tight end because I think this is a good way to explain there is more than one way to accomplish your roster goals in college football recruiting. And we talked about this with quarterback a little bit, and we'll get to quarterback obviously at the end. But Dominic Kelly is not a transfer in the same way that, Terry Moore is a transfer to Ohio State. And I'm wondering if that is what ends up happening for Ohio State, where you end up, we say, you know what, we really like Curry, but we can go get a second or a third year player elsewhere who maybe will be here for 2 years, who maybe will stick around a little bit. So maybe they end up with Oglesby, kid out of New Palestine in Indiana. That's the same school that Ian Moore went to. Maybe they end up with Oglesby and Curry, but I have Curry for 1, and then I think we could be in a situation where it's a portal ad, but it's not necessarily let's go get Max Clare, who's here for 1 year. I think you could be in much more of a let's go get Will Kazmarek, who could be here for 2 years.
Who joined Jameer Brown in the class?
This is another interesting one. I mentioned kind of off the hop that, Monson Sales is somebody that it seems to be kind of trending towards Indiana. I have Blake Wong joining him, 6'1", receiver out of Norco, California, number 261 overall prospect in the Rivals industry ranking, number 38 receiver, good football player. Ohio State's been on him for forever. Cortez Hankton has made him a priority since he showed up. I think this is maybe one of those things where Friday, May 15th, 2026, Friday, May 15th, 2029, if Blake Wong does end up in the class, maybe we could start to have a conversation about what did we learn from Blake Wong and his recruitment, because this was somebody that Hankton, looked at pretty early. I have them adding 3. Torian Rollins is the last player in that mix, a kid out of Georgia. Ohio State has kind of gotten in on him kind of later in the process. His recruitment has gotten, pretty big. He got an offer on May 4th. May the 4th be with you, Torian. But Oklahoma has offered since then. I'm scrolling through his social media now. Florida offered. Michigan offered. These are big schools that are kind of getting into the mix late with Rollins. So I think you add 3. And as I look at this room, I'm wondering if we see another transfer portal addition or 2 going into 2027. I mentioned that with tight end, you're not replacing Jeremiah Smith. There is no other Jeremiah Smith. I don't care how good Chris Henry Jr. is. But even if you want to say, let's believe the hype, and it's Chris Henry Jr. and Brock Boyd starting as second-year players, I think there is a little bit of a gap there. Is it Phillip Bell? Is Kyle Parker back for a 5th year?
Mm-hmm.
Brandon Ennis is going to go. Devin McEwen's going to go. Is Des Jones ready to make that leap? Is Jaquaden Guilford going to make it an all second-year team? I don't know, and I think that room could be well served by a veteran. So I think you take 3, kind of with the caveat of we will be adding 3 players to our room, with the understanding we will be adding some other veterans to our room at a later date.
Okay, let's talk about Monson Sales for a second.
Okay.
Yeah, the crystal ball started coming out. What was that, Thursday last week? As people listen to us, we're recording this on Friday, but you're listening to it Tuesday, that Indiana's in the lead. And then you go look at his official visit schedule, and he literally just left Indiana not that long ago. That's the only official visit he's taken. He's got Alabama, Texas. He'll be at Ohio State on June 12th. And I'm sure we'll be talking heavy about that week as well. He has to go to Miami. Why should I care about a crystal ball in the middle of May? When if I'm a fan, why should I care about a crystal ball in the middle of May when I know at this point most of these kids don't commit until after they take their official visits?
Yeah, you shouldn't.
That's part 1 of my questioning, and if that's the answer, that's fine. Does Ohio State need Monson Sales? Well, actually, no. That's question 3. Question 2: if this were 2023,
he would be at Ohio State.
Okay, I'm just
23, 22, 21. I think if you go back, he's at Ohio State.
Okay, and I'm not saying that to make you sound bitter, make Ohio State fans sound bitter, or Ohio State media sound bitter. It's the way to emphasize the times we are in.
Mm-hmm.
The days of stacking uber 5-star, of having 4 top 100 recruits, having 2 5-stars in a class, I think they are over. So I think it's a fair expectation that Cortez Hankton to bring a 5-star wide receiver in every single year for the most part.
Yes.
Right.
Correct.
Now, if it's once every 4 years a class doesn't have that, and that's your class where you're more about the depth and you are the top of the class, whatever. But more often than not, you should have a 5-star wide receiver every single year coming to Ohio State, as long as Ryan Day is still here, right?
Correct. And like you said, more often than not, we're not. And I want to be clear, I'm not gonna look at Cortez Hankton and be like, wow, what an abdication of duty that he didn't bring in a 5-star receiver. All he did was bring in 3 top 150 players. It's like, okay, well, one of them's ranked 52 and one of them's ranked 49 and one of them's ranked 112. That's a completely reasonable class as well.
It is. 5-star is supposed to be equivalent to first-round draft pick. And correct. I think every year there should be a player who is coming in here as a wide receiver where we are looking at him and going, if he hits as a 5-star, if he just lives up to what his profile is, he is a first-round wide receiver. So far, Christian Jr., his profile suggests he is going to be a first-round draft pick when he leaves here. Jameer Brown, his profile suggest when he leaves here, he is going to be a first-round draft pick. Now, I think if you're not going to get multiple profiles like that, because that was the thing. In 2020, you had two dudes with profiles like that. Now, whether they did or not, it's a different conversation, because you get to 4 or 5 years after their careers are over here. Julian Fleming, he didn't end up being a first-round draft pick. He was a 2-year starter here, and then he transferred to Penn State. G. Scott as a top 100 recruit. He didn't end up being a first-round draft pick. He actually transitioned to tight end his second year here, and he ended up being a quality player for Ohio State. Mookie Cooper, he didn't end up being a first-round draft pick. He transferred after 1 year to Missouri, where I think he was a starter for a couple years and whatnot. Jackson Smith-Njigba was the only one who ends up being a first-round draft pick. Fine, but on signing day, you had 2 5-star recruits whose profile suggested that if they hit, they'll be first-round draft picks, and then 2 other top 100 recruits. In 2021, you had Emeka Egbuka, who fit that profile of, okay, his profile suggests when he leaves here, he'll be a first-round draft pick. And then you had Jaden Ballard, who was a Ohio kid who had an interesting skill set, where if it hits, it's interesting. And then you had the son of a Hall of Famer, who probably was underrated to begin with, but whatever. 2 of those 3 end up being first-round draft picks, and the other one never ends up being a starter for a year. That gets you to 2022. That's the first class where they don't have a guy who fit that description, and all those guys were gone by the 4th year of their career here. You're talking Keon Grays, Caleb Burton, Caleb Brown, and Kojo Antwi. Kojo Antwi, I think, was the one who stuck around the most. Fine, whatever. You just have back-to-back elite classes. If that means you now have essentially how we just talked about the cornerback class of this year, then whatever. How do you follow that up the next year? Carnell Tate and Brandon Ennis have profiles that suggest if they hit their first-round draft picks. We'll see what Brandon is. He's going into a very important 4th year here. They also had Noah Rogers and Bryson Rogers in those classes. Noah Rogers transferred to NC State, and now he's at Bama, I believe. And Bryson Rogers followed Brian Hartline to South Florida. Okay, so they're not his. And Carnell Tate was just the number 4 pick in the NFL draft. Okay, 2024. Mylan Graham has a profile that suggests if he hits, he's a first-round draft pick. Unfortunately, that didn't hit here, and now he's at Notre Dame, where Gillis, I don't know if he's going to start for them this year. Okay, but whatever, he's starting brand new somewhere else. They also had Jalen McClellan, but he ended up flipping to Oregon on signing day, and he's a starter. And he's a part of the one group, I think, in the Big Ten who can look Ohio State in the eye right now when it comes to who has the best wide receiver corps in college football. But yeah, they also had Jeremiah Smith, who the NFL is already doing things with and putting on their social media. And he's a year from being able to be a part of the NFL. 2025, you had Quincy Porter, who fit that description. Unfortunately, that's not going to happen here. It doesn't mean he won't turn into a first-round draft pick. He might just do it at Notre Dame, or he might not. Who knows? Phillip Bell is still here, and Desi Jones is still here. And I'm missing somebody from that class, I think.
In 25?
Yeah.
So that would be Phillip Bell,
Porter,
Des Jones, Jaden Ricketts?
He's a freshman.
26, yeah.
It might just be 3. Okay, but regardless, and then you get to 2026. Christian Jr. has the profile. Jaquaden Guilford has the profile of a guy who should at least be good. But I think the important piece is you got Brock Boyd.
Bodpin Miller.
Yeah, Bodpin Miller, who's now at Washington.
He
might not even be playing wide receiver anymore. But I think if you're not going to have multiple profile, if he hits, he's a first rounder when they're already coming in the door, then you at least need to have one of those guys. And then you have to have the other end of the spectrum of, I did a heck of a good job scouting and evaluating this dude. And I got a guy that everybody else missed. And that's where Brock Boyd is.
Yes. And if that sounds harsh, like you have to find Brock Boyd, well, tough S. That's the job.
But you know what? Your boss is saying that.
Yeah.
How many times over the last 2 years has Brian Day said some level of the phrase, evaluations are more important than ever? It's because you can't load up on 5 stars anymore.
Correct.
You might spend your money on one, maybe a second if I think this is a unique situation where if they got Monsoon Sales and they got Jameer Brown, and one of the reasons they got both is because one of them is from your backyard, then whatever. But if you're not going to get Monsoon Sales and Jameer Brown the way you would have gotten both of those guys if this were 2023, 2021, okay, well then you better get Jameer Brown and this year's equivalent of Brock Boyd, where he gets here and 2 years from now we're going, man, he was really underrated. Good find.
They turned a 4-star, a 3-star into the 38th overall pick, right? There's that glut of receivers that go, kind of in that mix, right? Who's the dude from Ole Miss that everybody thought was overdrafted? Stripling or whatever?
Yeah.
I forget his name. My apologies, but that type of draft area, where it's
and
hey, he's not a first-round pick, but he went 48th.
But I mean, even it's like, or you can just. This gets back to the roots. Yeah. Who started this run of elite wide receivers? A 5-star named Garrett Wilson and a 3-star named Chris Olave,
Mm-hmm.
who was, now the context of why he was rated so low is well documented at this point, but go find that guy. Because you know what? Who might be that in 3 years? Brock Boyd and Christian Reed Jr. Based on their current trajectory, if we get to, what would that be, the 2029 NFL draft? And one of them is the 7th pick and one of them is the 18th pick, and we're like, man, look at Brock Boyd. He's first rounder, just like Christian Reed Jr. is. Those two can literally be new Chris Olave, Garrett Wilson. Where like one of them came in here and everybody expected him to be a dude, and the other one made everybody stupid for ever ranking him as low as they ranked him. So that's my question for like, do they need Monsoon Sales? If the answer is no, okay, then what are you doing if you're not getting Monsoon Sales?
Yeah.
With all that being said, do you think they're out of the race to get him?
No. I like I said, I just said that like the crystal balls are great, but those things are great, but like I don't know. It's kind of just like saying Ohio State's going to win the game today, 7:50 a.m. It's like, okay, I think so too. Like, do I think he's going to end up at Ohio State? No, but that doesn't mean it's not over.
Right.
Like Ohio State can still kind of find, and look, we talk about, can we talk about our next position real quick? Because I want to blend these two things together.
Yeah, we can talk about the Canadian.
David Gabriel Georges, I have them getting number one and only running back in the class. And the reason I wanted to bring those two things together is because David Gabriel Georges is one of those players that you talk to people around the building, you talk to people outside the building, you talk to people who have watched a football game once in their life, you talk to anybody and they go, holy crap, that kid's incredible. And I think Ohio State has done really well. Lachlan, Ohio State running back coach Carlos Lachlan, was Gabriel Georges' first offer.
Really?
Yeah. I should say, I think it was his first. That's what I got told today as we're doing this.
Like Carlos Lachlan was the first coach to offer him?
It was either his first offer or Lachlan's first offer at Ohio State.
Okay.
I have to go back and listen to that. But either way, he's been there a long time. I'm sorry for screwing that up, but he's been in that corner, been in that mix for a long time with this kid. And let's say it goes haywire, and let's say this kid commits to Tennessee. Okay, the number that you had maybe accounted for a 5-star running back that you think can be a game-changing running back who can start for you in 2027, maybe things shift a little bit, and maybe you kind of move down the line and go, okay, we don't have what we did at running back, and now we need to kind of go down the line, and maybe we check back in on Noah Roberts, a kid who committed to Texas that Ohio State had been after for a while, or Elijah Kimball, a kid from New York that Ohio State has kind of been in the mix with. And look, this is the way that Ohio State has to operate, right? You have to kind of stay on the ball with these kids, because, you never know. So maybe it's Noah Roberts, maybe it's Elijah Kimball. Amir Brown is another kid that they offered in the class. Maybe you go get one of them, and then all of a sudden you've got some extra dollars floating around. You found some money in the couch cushions, and you can say, Monson Sales, I know you've committed to Indiana, or I know you're still uncommitted, but circumstances have changed. And that's the thing. This is not a thing where it's rigid for the year, where you look at it and say, this is the way it is. This is something that completely changes. Ohio State could have, Kalon Bailey, a 3-star player who's number 1,200 overall in the rankings. And by the time you get to October, he's number 112. And all of a sudden the money's different and the situation's different. And all of a sudden you have to, it's like nailing Jello to a wall. Like it's like, it's just going to keep moving no matter what you try to set in place. There's more than one way I think that like Monson Sales ends up at Ohio State. And it's not just like, that kid's going to go to Indiana because, he wants to stay home, and Indiana's got a great thing going right now, defending national champions. Kurt Cignetti's a great coach. They've developed quarterbacks, incredibly in these last 2 years with Fernando and Rourke. Like, there's options here for Ohio State.
The fundamental difference between these two 5-stars is this question. And now I'm speaking from the Fringe's side of things. Shout out to the Fringe. If a Fringe member asks, hey, if we don't get Monson Sales, do we riot? The answer is no, we don't riot. In fact, I think there's more pressure on Indiana to keep that kid in state than there is on any other program to land Monson Sales. Like, because them landing Monson Sales is like the ultimate flag plant of we are
proof
here.
Of concept is what that
yes.
is. Because you can't I respect them doing the portal thing, and I have oodles of time to talk about Kurt Signetti and say like, wow, they went and got this kid who did this in the portal, and they found this guy who was undervalued and this guy who was undervalued, and they did all those great things, and that's great. I don't know if you can do that for 15 years and win national championships every other year.
I just know that
you need a more space. I think.
When recruits start picking schools that recruits of that caliber and description typically don't pick, it's a shift in the paradigm and how you look at things. It's like when Clemson stacked Deshaun Watson and then a few years later went and got Trevor Lawrence. It was a shift in some things. David Gabriel Georges, Fringe member, asks, do we ride if we don't get him? Yes, because Carlos Loughlin is his first offer. I just looked it up. Carlos Loughlin offered David Gabriel Georges on February 27, 2020.
By the way, I think it's just George because he's from Quebec City. So I think it's just David. I'm sure there's a pronunciation on it, but I believe it's David Gabriel George.
Okay, David Gabriel George on February 27, 2024. 2.5 months later, Carlos Loughlin left for Ohio State, because Tony Alford left for Michigan, all those different things. And the first thing Carlos Loughlin did that summer is go, hey, come on down to Columbus. Come see. I still want you. I just think it's interesting because I'm pretty sure Jeremiah Smith's first offer was from Brian Hartline. So just like parallels there of just how long I've had skin in this game. I was first. I need to win this battle, which is why everything you just said about all these other running backs is great. They need to. This is your liver.
So as you guys are listening to this, as you guys are listening to this, I talked with his high school coach on the phone just for like 10 minutes, and the phrase Sunday player got used. And it's important to remember that he is currently a high school junior. Plays on Fridays, Sunday player. Those are the things that are being said about David Gabriel George.
It's all that stuff is great. It's the investment that's been put in, like the emotional investment that's going into Ohio State getting to this kid right now. To get to the finish line and not get him would be
gutting.
I don't know if there would be a bigger miss. Because even like David Sanders, that was a miss, but it was a miss because of the context around what was happening. This is like, you're going to plug this dude in and you're going to play football.
There's no, you hear this a lot, and I think, it's easy to be cynical about recruit. I texted about Brock Williams today, and somebody said this isn't college football anymore. And, people can be upset about, the way that, the sport is kind of trending and this and that and the other. But if you follow recruiting enough, you hear this a lot. Oh, it wasn't a take. They missed out. Oh, they found somebody better. Oh, don't worry that we didn't get this guy because we got this guy and he's way better. Or, hey, he just simply asked for too much money. There's no spinning missing out on this kid. There's not a spin zone of like, we'll be fine. It's the same thing with Jeremiah Smith. Whereas if Jeremiah Smith had flipped to Miami on signing day in 2023, if he had decided, I'm going to go play for the Hurricanes, we wouldn't have gotten on this pod and been like, I'm sure it'll be fine. It's not that good. Like, no, we're not going to, like, there's not a way out of this now. And like, look, if you get it, and I want to be clear, if they do end up landing this kid, we're going to get on the spot and be like, goddamn, what a great job that Ohio State recruiting did for this. The recruiting operations, Mark Pantoni, Carlos Loughlin, the entire offensive staff that went down to visit him. Great job. You guys did your job above and beyond, and you did everything you could, and you did everything you had to do. Plus, take a bow. You did a great job. But if you don't get him, it's okay to be pissed.
It's because, it just fundamentally changes the way you're going to go about offense.
Yes.
When you have a guy like that where you don't have a guy. Okay, now we've made it to the most important position on this roster. A couple yes or no's first. You're not allowed to give context. Your answers are a 3-letter word or a 2-letter word. That's it. Do you have Brady Edmonds in your 2.0 mock class? Okay. Here are Ohio State's quarterback offers as of right now. Trey Taylor, Brady Edmonds, Champ Mons, Derek Baker. All 4 of them are committed places right now. Trey Taylor's committed to Nebraska. Wonderful Mons. It's just wonderful. Champ Mons is just a great name. He's committed to Notre Dame as a reclassification, and then Derek Baker is currently committed to Tennessee. And you are saying Brady Edmonds will not be in the class, so he will be not amongst the committed group. Does Ohio State's 2027 quarterback currently have an offer from Ohio State?
I think yes.
Is his name Trey Taylor?
I think yes.
Okay. Now you may give your explanations.
Derek Baker, you mentioned it. I don't know if Ohio State's going to get back in with him or Caden Jones. I checked in with somebody today from the Notre Dame point of things to just be like, this is like locked in, right? Champ Monts, Notre Dame, and I gotta, they're good. The quote was, "We're good, so they're good." Then you get to Trey Taylor, and I think this is a situation where reading the tea leaves is very important. And I think this is a situation where we have to look at this and say, okay, Brady Edmonds has said everything correct. Brady Edmonds has done everything correct. He's been a leader for the class. He's talked about things the right way. He's been great with other recruits. He's been great with reporters, which is obviously, I'm not saying that as like he was nice to me, so, we have to be whatever. No, I mean that as like, that there's an element of this comes with the territory and this comes with the job of handling that type of pressure. That's not just like, I got to do this for my team. Like, I think Brady has handled that great. However, when you start to look at what's going on, Trey Taylor has said, like, I'm not taking visits, but I also can't burn bridges in today's day and age. And because of that, I wrote about this for the site on Friday morning, as you guys are listening to this, Friday the 15th. I don't think anybody did anything wrong, but because of this order of operations that has been set out where Ohio State says, you know what, we got to find the best guy for us. Because think about this, like, the Buckeye Talk listener that, maybe is like, I wish this wasn't happening to Brady. I'm with you. You could feel bad and say, you know what, feelings are going to get hurt in recruiting, and that's totally fine. But think about 2028 and 2029 if Ohio State's walking off the field in a loss to Michigan because their quarterback wasn't good enough. How are you feeling? That's unfortunately the way that this game has to be played, and it's the way that the game is played in general. I think personally that Ohio State and Brady Edmonds are probably headed for a split. Just kind of ear to the ground, read, and then just also having a social media account where you see Northwestern visiting Brady Edmonds, and UCLA has been very consistent with Brady Edmonds throughout this whole thing. He's from Huntington Beach, California. You start to think like, okay, there's musical chairs going around everywhere, and you don't want to be left, at the altar, and you don't want to be left, kind of last man standing. And I am wondering if we get to a situation where instead of Ohio State having 2 for a brief moment in time, and then we go down to 1, I think we could see a situation where Ohio State goes down to 0, and then they add again, and then they add that back to 1. I think, having 2 members of a recruiting class at quarterback is going to be very, very difficult. The money involved, the understanding of one of those guys you're bringing in is going to be valued higher. Like think about it from, let's use me as an example. I hope you guys like listening to me. I hope you guys like reading what I write. I hope Steven and Stefan enjoy working with me and think I'm decently easy to work with, even though if I piss them off sometimes. But if cleveland.com says, hey guys, we're hiring another OSU writer. Oh, what's he going to do? Well, he's going to cover the team. So he'll be there for games and for practices and for media sessions. Oh, okay. And then he's also going to be our main recruiting guy. But don't worry, Andrew, you're good. We're not firing. We're good.
We love you.
Yeah, I'm going to be like, they don't think I'm good enough. And they'll be like, well, so I'll still be on the pod. We're actually going to hire this other person, and they're going to be on the pod. He or she is going to be talking with Steven and Stefan about recruiting.
No. Let's make it more fun. You guys are going to have a off-season battle for who's on the pod.
Who gets the better sources? But think about that in your own personal situation, in my situation that I just listed. Like at some point, you're going to get the hint, and especially in the situation whereas the money can change, where it's, hey Andrew, you're making X, but it's not going to be X anymore. It's going to be X minus. Because we can only afford this because we decided to devote that. Like at some point you either get the hint and say, you know what, this is best for me. I can't be here anymore. This is not good for me in my career. And guess what? If that happened, you and Steven or you and Stefan and you and the listeners, they would be like, I kind of get it. I kind of get why Andrew would leave in that situation. And if you're an accountant and that happens, or you're a teacher, or you're a whatever professions you are listening to this, you get it. And I'm wondering if we start to get to that point where it's like, you know what, this is just best for me from Edmonds. I think 2 is very difficult. I don't think they end up with 2. I think they end up with 1. I think it's Trey Taylor. I think Trey Taylor is going to, when it comes down to it, I think Trey Taylor is going to see Ohio State, and they are going to keep pushing for him. And I don't think it's going to go great for Nebraska this year. And I think you could be in a situation where it's like, man, this 10-1 team going into Michigan week really wants to bring you on a visit after Thanksgiving, and Nebraska's 4-7. And yeah, you love them, but he's going through kind of a similar thing that Brady Edmonds is going through. Trey Taylor's got to do what's best for him. Ohio State's got to do what's best for them. Brady Evans has got to do what's best for them. And that doesn't mean anybody's wrong. And it may suck, but it doesn't mean anybody did anything wrong. And I think that's just the way it is.
Mind you, Trey Taylor is from Illinois, and he is actively moving to Nebraska.
He's moving to Omaha so we can play his senior year of high school football in Omaha, which is like less than an hour, I think, away from Lincoln.
Recruiting's a rough place. 614-350-3315, 2-week free trial, $399 after that. That's the class. That's 2.0 mock class. Official visits start in 2 weeks. Camp start in 3 weeks. And we're in that point of the year where recruiting kind of takes the front seat. We're coming off a really good week if you're an Ohio State football fan. You got new jerseys, you got new turf. I wonder what you might get next that's new. Good time to be an Ohio State fan. 614-350-3315, 2-week free trial, $399 after that. For Andrew Gillis, I'm Stephen Means. Talk to you guys later.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile with a message for everyone paying big wireless way too much. Please, for the love of everything good in this world, stop. With Mint, you can get premium wireless for just $15 a month. Of course, if you enjoy overpaying, no judgments, but that's weird. Okay, one judgment. Anyway, give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. Intro rate first 3 months only, then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See full terms at mintmobile.com.